And that actually just a few people, so if there was about 4 or 5 people.
Are you signed in? Are you signed in? Okay, 93 so far. Besides what's streaming on.
Would everyone please be able to mute themselves? Thank you.
I'm trying.
For tomorrow, it's a little expensive. It's like a real activity. I mean, like I'm just wanting Tommy to go on a pony ride, which is not expensive. That's $20. But they take on the beach. If you have a group larger than 2, which I said we do, you go as a group and they lead you, and you go for about like an hour on the beach with the horses. But it's $70 per person.
Okay, the problem is, Sabine is in an exam till 12, so.
We don't need to make any decisions. They said that I told them how many we were, and they just told me what.
Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Adva Vilchinsky from the Israeli Consulate. More people are joining, so we'll take 1 more minute and then we'll be able to start.
I was muted. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to start again. I just realized that I was muted. Okay. My name is Sophia Weinstein. I'm the Director of Academic Affairs here at the Israeli Consulate in New York. The consulate is extremely excited today to host this webinar and to partner with the Institute of Black Solidarity with Israel and to share this incredible story with you. I'm going to start by introducing Rafi Berg. Rafi Berg is the Middle East editor of the BBC News website and author of Red Sea Spies, the book that he has in his video that I'll show you. Red Sea Spies, the true story of the Mossad's fake diving resort, which speaks about Israeli secret agents who smuggled Ethiopian Jews to Israel from Sudan and the ingenious and daring methods they used to do it. Rafi joins us from London, where he lives and works. So thank you so much, Rafi.
Well, thank you very much indeed for that introduction. It's a pleasure and a privilege to be here to introduce this event with some opening remarks. So not too long ago, I stumbled across an extraordinary event, which at the time I knew little about. This was the bringing to Israel of the Jews of Ethiopia. Extraordinary because this was no simple migration of one people from a country to another country. No, this was something unique, something of literally biblical proportions. It was an operation which was carried out by Israel's Secret Service and made possible by the fortitude and resilience and determination of the Ethiopian Jews themselves. I delved into the story and what I found out literally blew me away. It's a tale of drama, danger, and daring do, of the return of a biblical lost tribe of Jews to its ancient homeland, Israel, and the use of an incredible ruse of a fake diving resort which enabled the secret agents to carry out their mission. This was the start of how I came to develop this story into a book, Red Sea Spies, and the beginning of a really remarkable journey of discovery for me. I knew little about Black Jews when I started out. I was quite blasé. I heard of Operation Moses, didn't know much more. But the more I learned and opened my eyes, the deeper my admiration grew for this very special community. Were it not for them themselves, none of what was accomplished could ever have happened. The Ethiopian Jews left their homes on foot, under the cover of darkness, risking their lives to walk from Ethiopia to Sudan, not because of war or famine, but because Sudan, they learned, was a gateway to the land of Israel, which they referred to as the land of Jerusalem. It was a land which they'd yearned for generations. Now, my book, which tells the story in full of the fake diving resort and the Mossad-led operation, could never have happened without the collaboration of one man in particular, someone who I really consider a hero. Now, he would object to that description, but that's how I regard him. And you're extremely fortunate to hear from him today, and that's Danny Lamore, the commander of the operation. It was through a sequence of contacts that I was ultimately led to be in touch with him. I called him up, introduced myself over the telephone, but he didn't want to have a conversation in that way. He asked to meet me face to face at Charles de Gaulle Airport, a very cloak and daggers. We had a meeting. I think the purpose of it was rather for him to check me out rather than the other way around. I told him that I was interested in documenting the real story of what happened, and he went away, thought about it, took advice and so on. And eventually I heard back from him, and he wanted, it was something he felt ought to be done, and he agreed to work with me on this project. And so really began a life-changing period for me, where I met not only him, but members of his team who carried out the operation and served at the fake resort, but also the Ethiopian Jews themselves who were smuggled out of Sudan in this operation. One story in particular sticks in my mind, and that's of then 8-year-old Zude Mulu. He doesn't currently go by the name of Zude Mulu, but he was at the time. Zude was in a refugee camp in Sudan with his family. His mother sent him on without his other members of his family to save his life, to be smuggled out of this camp, this wretched camp in Sudan, to be smuggled and taken off to Israel by these unknown Mossad operatives. Zude, who I met, described to me how when he was on the journey, on the transportation driven by the members of Danny's team, there was a part of the trip where the Mossad agents stopped off to give refreshments to the human cargo. And one of the agents gave Zude a carton of orange juice. And now he'd never seen orange juice before, and it tasted sweet to him. And he said to me, thinking at the time, he remembers thinking that, this must be water from Jerusalem, because to him it was sweet water. Eventually, at the end of the transportation, they got to the beach where the refugees were handed over to the Israeli Navy commandos. And Zude, who'd never seen the sea before, didn't know what it was. He said he watched in awe as 2 Israeli Navy SEALs emerged from the water. He said it was like a miracle because he didn't know human beings could come out of the water, out of the sea like that. And he assumed that these must be two angels. It's a beautiful story. Zude went on to become an Orthodox Ashkenazi rabbi in Israel, changed his name to Rabbi Doctor. He's an academic, Rabbi Dr. Sharon Shalom. And he stayed lifelong friends with Danny, and they're people I love very much. Now, in 1985, there was a secret operation called Operation Moses, which you may be familiar with. It was carried out in parallel, so to speak, with Operation Brothers, which is the operation which Danny led. But Operation Moses airlifted some 7,000 Ethiopian Jews in secret from Sudan to Israel. But the operation was leaked and it was brought to a halt. Now, when I was writing my book, I came across an incredible quote, and this was written by the distinguished political commentator William Safire in the New York Times. And I think what he had to say is particularly poignant given the current issues of divisiveness and race relations which are currently sweeping America. This is what he said. For the first time in history, thousands of Black people are being brought into a country, not in chains, but in dignity, not as slaves, but as citizens. I think that's a good point to conclude my opening remarks and introduce the moderator for today's event. He's the director of the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, Mr. Joshua Washington. Now, the organization he leads is dedicated to education about the bond between Black Americans and Jews, particularly during the civil rights era to the present day. Now, two of the most emblematic figures of the US civil rights movement, Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, were both avowed proponents of the right of the Jewish people to live in peace and security in the state of Israel. Both rejected the smear that Zionism is a form of racism. In the same vein, Joshua Washington and the IBSI also stand up for what is right, carrying the message that Jewish and Black harmony is natural and a tremendous force for good in the world. Joshua is the son of the founder of the IBSI, Pastor Dumasani Washington, and he writes and presents extensively on Zionism and civil rights. He's also an accomplished musician, having graduated from the University of Pacific's Conservatory of Music. His specialisms have brought him to Israel twice, once as part of Christians United for Israel, a movement of over 8 million members, and separately as part of a musical event. Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy what you're about to hear as I now hand over with great pleasure to Joshua.
Thank you so much, Rafi, and thank you all. It's an honor to be here to be with you and to speak with Danny. Danny, I'm so excited to be asking these questions. And if you all have questions while we're going through, feel free to type them in, and I'll make sure to get to as many of them as I possibly can. As Rafi was saying, Danny Limor is an incredible man, and I'm just going to read for you a part of his bio here. He was born and raised in Uruguay. At age 16, he went alone to Israel with Youth Aliyah. Spent 3 years in yeshiva studies. He spent his military service as a paratroops officer, participated in 4 wars, 67, 69, 73, and 82 as a lieutenant colonel in the reserves. He attended Bar Ilan University as a political science and international relations major. Spent 25 years in the Prime Minister's office, and among other tasks, he was responsible at the headquarters in the field of Ethiopian Jews, Aliyah through the Sudan, which we'll talk about some more today. After his retirement, he still conducted projects for the Prime Minister's office until recently. Currently, he's carrying out for the Ministry of Diaspora Affairs the mapping of new emerging Jewish communities around the world. He's a founding member and chairman of the board of the Nakshan NPO School for Social Leadership. He's fluent in English, French, Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, Hebrew, Yiddish, and Arabic. And he frequently lectures about Beta Israel and the saga of their Aliyah. So ladies and gentlemen, I am very honored to present to you today, Mr. Danny Leomar. Danny, thank you so much for being here with us today. And
can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
Okay, fine. Sorry, because I thought I was muted.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm also. I feel. I'm quite touched by this meeting. I admit that I didn't know much about the organization that you're active in, and I'm happy to hear that there are African Americans that are in favor of Israel.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you, sir. And Danny, and it's an honor. We've been studying a lot, my father and I, about the Ethiopian Jews, about the Jews around the continent of Africa, even. And so to be able to sit here and ask questions to someone who is so closely related to all of these things, it's a great honor. So I want to just ask, first of all, Miss Danny, can you please tell us a little bit more about Operation Brothers and what was your role in that?
I'll say a few words before of introduction of my attitude towards all this characterizing people by origin, by color, by the language they speak. Since I was young, maybe because I grew up in a country, Uruguay is a very small country, not many people have visited there. It's a very, very open society, very liberal, and I grew up in an atmosphere of I would say, maybe I'm idealizing a little bit, but an atmosphere of equality. I'm not talking now about social economical situation, but about the external aspect of a person did not characterize anything. I mean, you could be any color, and nobody would judge you because of that. Even anti-Semitism almost didn't exist there, right? And it's a Catholic country, but it's a very moderate and liberal Catholic country. So having said that, for me, it was, when I came to Israel and later on, I found out by reading that we have actually brothers and sisters living in Africa. I was thrilled. I was thrilled by that. I mean, for me, it was something exciting, that the Jews are not all the same color. They don't look. And of course, people talk about genetics. I, for one, don't believe in genetics. I don't think you can define anyone, especially a Jewish person, by his DNA, right? There is no Jewish DNA, in my opinion, because to be Jewish is to believe in something. It's something that doesn't regard the physical aspect. Now, I came to this to command this operation because I was lucky. I was in the right place at the right time, and I had some experience already of traveling to Africa, and I always liked traveling to Africa. and I felt good. So obviously, when they were looking for someone who was going to start the whole thing, I was chosen, and then the rest is a long story. But you said, Operation Brothers.
Yes, sir.
It's not what do you call it? An accident of language that we call it. We did call it Operation Brothers because all of us that participated that operation, be Mossad members or Navy people or Air Force, for all of us, we were doing something for our brothers and our sisters, of course. But if you call an operation brothers and sisters, it would be like a Broadway show. So, brothers include everyone.
Yes, sir. And you said that you were younger when you kind of realized that there were Jews in different parts of Africa. How old were you when you made that realization, when you found that out?
Quite late, by the way, because in Israel, life is very you don't have time to. I came when I was 16. 16, I studied in the yeshiva. You don't deal with those things. Then I went to the army, 5 years in the army. Then things came to my knowledge. I would say I was close to 30 years old.
Mm. Wow.
And once I learned about it, I went as deep as I could, and I read everything that was to be read. And so when I first went to Ethiopia, because the operation began in Ethiopia, not in Sudan. Sudan was later, but we were instructed to do everything and anything so that the Ethiopian Jews could realize their dream and return to Zion, right? So they were in Ethiopia. So first thing was to go to Ethiopia and learn about their situation, which was not known in detail. For example, they were spread over 400 villages. There were, there were more concentrations around in the north, in the province of Tigray, and in the east or in the west, in the area of Gondar, Lake Tana, the sources of the Blue Nile. But they were also spread all over many, many, many villages. Some people say 400 villages.
Wow.
So now, if you have to organize a huge crowd of people, including elderly people and children and pregnant women and so on, you have to go there and see by yourself how to organize that. And,
wow.
It was very difficult. Anyway.
Absolutely.
Please.
And yeah, and so what do you think brought the state of Israel to issue this Operation Brothers?
Well, it's not, as you say, it's not black and white. There is a lot of gray in this. Actually, you have to be honest and say the truth.
Mm.
The Ethiopian Jews were not recognized by the state of Israel at the same time as all the other tribes, Jewish tribes, from Kurdistan, India, to Morocco and Poland and Germany and Poland, all those communities. They were recognized under the law of return beginning from 1950. The law of return was created in 1950.
Mm.
And actually, the Ethiopian Jews were the only ones that were not accepted. Their aliyah was not accepted.
Wow.
And there are reasons for that. I don't want to go into this right now. It took actually 25 years. Only in 1975 were they allowed to come to Israel.
And
And
what
that
was
was
oh, sorry.
the reasons were combined. There was pressure there were several hundred Ethiopian Jews living in Israel at the time. At the beginning, they were illegal. And in 1975, they got the Israeli citizenship. And of course, you know, several hundred is not a big crowd, but they rallied people, you know, became their partners in pressuring and in demonstrating. And also some Jewish communities abroad applied pressure. And but I think that the nomination or the election of Prime Minister Menachem Begin in 1977 brought about, you know, the real change, because one of the first things that he instructed the chief of the Mossad was to bring the Ethiopian Jews as quick and as best as possible.
Wow.
And that, you know, this is what this was the beginning, and the rest was developed, you know, once you start studying the terrain and the sequences, slowly you begin to planify and to get in touch with the Jews there.
Oh, wow. And how so? And I know, so we have this, and then obviously we have the bigger operations to the Operation Moses and Solomon. How far has Israel come doing this, and what is holding it back from continuing this mission? Have you guys gotten all the Ethiopian Jews, do you know, or is it still something that's continuing?
First of all, you know, when you speak about the other Operation Moses and Solomon, they're different, because what we did during Operation Brothers was totally clandestine. It was, you know, we were undercover, deep undercover. Even before the story of the resort on the Red Sea, I was working there for almost 2 years with my partner, who was an Ethiopian Jew, and he was actually responsible for the fact that we came to Sudan. Because this guy who is not with us anymore, Ferede Aklum, he was one of the young leaders of the Jewish community in Ethiopia. He was a teacher and social activist and so on. And he was known by some people in Israel. And when he reached the Sudan, he escaped from Ethiopia because he was going to be arrested by the local security service for being a Zionist. And so he got in touch with us. It's a long story. And the decision was made to send me to Sudan to meet him and see how difficult would be for the rest of the Ethiopian Jews to come to Sudan. So that was totally clandestine. The Operation Moses was half clandestine. Only 2 or 3 people high up in government, including the president of Sudan, were aware and were well paid for that, by the way. But this huge movement of about 6,500 or something Jews that in 5 weeks were flown to Brussels, the whole movement was conducted by the Sudanese army with military vehicles from the area of the camps to the airport, the international airport in Khartoum. Everyone thought that these were Ethiopian refugees that were going to be relocated in Europe. Nobody thought these people are Jewish and that they actually were going to Israel. Operation Solomon, which took place in 1991, was totally different because it was an open operation done directly from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. Also, those Jews were bought, actually, from, they were sold by the president of that time, president or dictator of Ethiopia, Mengistu, and he's living in Zimbabwe with the money that he made from selling 15,000 Jews.
Wow.
And those people were brought in a airlift that took about 36 hours. 15,000, more than 15,000 people in 36 hours. Everything that flew went to Ethiopia and brought back Jews.
Wow.
So that's the, now you ask me about others, there's still people who are from originally Jewish, they were originally Jewish. You know, in Ethiopia, there was a process that resembles to that, what happened in the 16th century in Portugal and Spain. People were forced to become Christian. And things like that happen also in Ethiopia. The pressure of church and of missionaries and of the conditions was so heavy and sometimes very aggressive too, that people converted into Christianity. Some of them continue to practice Judaism secretly, like in Spain and Portugal. And for some generations, some of them became Christian, and some of them remained secret Jews. And in the last, I would say, 30 years, many of them are rejoining Judaism, and many of them have already made their aliyah. Now, this is not clandestine, this is open, this is, you know, Ethiopia and Israel have now diplomatic relations, and nothing is done secretly, everything is open, and you know, there are still about several thousand in Ethiopia. There is a government decision, as much as I know, because I'm not dealing with it these days, but there is a decision by the government that they all will come to Israel eventually.
And talking more about Operation Brothers, I know have you seen the movie that just came out, the Red Sea Diving Resort? I don't know if you had a chance to see that. Can you tell us how much of that movie was
please.
was accurate, and how much of that was real, and how much of it, you know, was Hollywood, and what was your take on that?
First of all, I saw it, but I also have to admit that I had some part. I did assist the scriptwriter Gideon Raff in his writing of a scenario.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I gave him as much information as I could, or as I would. And later on, when they started making actually the film, most of the scenes were done in Namibia, in Southwest Africa. So they invited me to the set, among other things, to brief the actors about, you know, what really happened. Gideon Raff, who wrote the scenario, was also the director of the film. He always stressed that he asked me to tell the truth only after they did the scene according to the scenario, because as you insinuated, there was a lot of difference between what you see in the film and what happened in reality. Actually, you know, to be honest, Gideon always said that the film was inspired by the facts and not based upon the facts. And he always said also, you know, you have to sell. You know, make a movie, you have to sell it.
Right.
We're talking about, we have a lot of American people here. So that was the public that he wanted to, you know, so they introduced the CIA and all kinds of things that never happened. We never had any cooperation with CIA on that matter. It was actually really an Israeli operation from A to Z. And, you know, if you want to know the story, you have to read Rafi's book, because Rafi got it right. He actually did a fantastic work. And in the film, there are some scenes that remind part of the things that happened. There are things that happen in the film that never happened in reality. For me, the most important thing that I wanted to be shown in the film was the relationship that we developed, Ferdi Aklum and myself, during, he stayed in Sudan about 18 months. And we lived together. I mean, we became brothers. This is one of the reasons the operation is called Brothers, because it started with this brotherhood between him and me. And later on, he was replaced by another guy he was already an Israeli from Ethiopian origin. His name was Zimna Berhanu, also passed away, and others. There were many, many others that, as Rafi said in the beginning, that were part of the operation. I mean, part. Without them, we could not do it. I mean, this was something that no side alone could have succeeded. Not the whites alone and not the black alone. This was like a strong coffee with a lot of milk working together, right? And this is what is, I think, singular to us Jews, for me, to the real Jews, is to understand that type of brotherhood has no limits, has no limitations of any kind. You know, you're Jewish, I mean, if you're a Jew, you're a Jew. It doesn't matter. By the way, Rafi spoke about Rav Shalom Sharon, this wonderful guy who was an officer in the army, by the way, also. And when my elder son, decided it was time to get married, I asked him to conduct the ceremony. And he actually was the rabbi that married my son. So he's, for me, it was like, close.
Absolutely.
For him too, I think. After that wedding, by the way, he started to be in great demand. All my friends married their sons or daughters, applied to him. Yeah.
Wow. And you mentioned a couple of times Ferdi Aklum, one of the Ethiopian leaders who helped lead the Ethiopians through Sudan. And I know you guys work together. Can you speak to your friendship, your guys' friendship with each other?
Look, this is the sort of relationship that can only develop in those conditions. Most of the time we slept in the open, in the African bush, savannah, and it's not an easy place to sleep. We didn't have, the area where we were operating, there were no hotels, and there was nothing, no infrastructure that could accommodate a white guy, So I went native, and I served in the paratroopers, so sleeping in the outside is nothing special. But Africa, you have wild animals on 4 legs, and especially on 2 legs.
Yeah.
Those were the dangerous. The danger came from the people, not less from animals. So when you share that type of situation, we used to sleep on shifts of 2 hours. One sleeps 2 hours, and before we went to sleep, we spoke a lot. We talked. We used to lit a small fire. It's important to have a small fire when you're sleeping outside.
Yes,
You can see all kind of crawling things, and and you can wild animals tend to avoid these places. Anyway, we used to speak a lot, and especially we shared the books that we have we had read before. You know, we were both approximately the same age, with totally different backgrounds. I grew up in Africa, I grew up in South America. As a young boy, he used to go out with a herd of goats and sheep. He only started his education when he was maybe 10 years old. He was very gifted, so he rapidly advanced. And to my shame, he had read Theodor Herzl's book Alt Neuland, which is actually the manifesto of Zionism. He read it, but I didn't. So, you know, I could speak about Che Guevara because that was my hero when I was young. And so the first time I had the opportunity, I read the book so I could speak to him, with him about the book. But, you know, we found a lot of things that were the common denominator between us, especially we understood that we had a lot of responsibility. And in our cooperation depended a lot of what came later. So we put aside both our egos. He had his, you know, his own, I had my own. We put them aside and we worked together. We actually worked together. Almost every decision, we made it together. And so I think this is symbolic, the whole thing, the whole, you know, 10 years of what happened after that.
Absolutely. That's incredible. I know we are, I have my last question and I'm going to open it up to questions from everyone who's listening. Can you just speak briefly on broader, so I know that you were involved very much in the Ethiopian Jews, but you also are involved in the Jews of all of Africa. Can you speak to that? Where are they and what is Israel doing now for those Jews? I know it may not be a quick answer, but
this is what I did for the last 2 years. I visited many communities in Africa, also in South America, but let's talk about Africa, which is fascinating because, you know, after, you know, nobody thought that besides the Beta Israel, the Ethiopian Jews, that there was such Jewish presence in Black Africa. I'm talking Africa under the Sahara, okay? North Africa is another story. But if you start in West Africa, you've got small communities in Ivory Coast, in Gabon, in Ghana, Cameroon, and you have a huge community in Nigeria. Nigeria, you have to understand, first of all, Nigeria is the largest, the most crowded country in Africa. Almost 200 million people. And it's a slight majority Muslim. But there is a very big Christian tribe called Igbo. Igbo is written I-G-B-O, you don't pronounce the G. Igbo, they say, the Igbo people say that it comes from the word Hebrew. Hebrew is Igbo. Igbo is Hebrew. The Jews, before they were called Jews, they were called Hebrews. You remember in the Bible?
Yes,
okay,
sir.
So that explains one of the theories of their presence in Nigeria. They consider themselves to be descendants of the tribe of Gad. But you remember your Bible, when the 12 tribes entered Israel about 3,200 years ago with Joshua, you know,
yes,
you're Joshua bin Nun, 2.5 tribes remained on the eastern side of the Jordan River. That was the tribe of Reuben, the tribe of Gad, and half of the tribe of Menashe. Right. By the way, you know that we have a lost tribe called Bnei Menashe, who are coming now from India, from the north of India. And that's also a fascinating story. And so these people consider themselves to be descendants of the tribe of God. Who, you know, you don't have empirical proofs of anything here. But that's what they believe. Now, a study that was made found that 500 years ago, when the first Catholic priests arrived to West Africa with Vasco da Gama. Vasco da Gama is the one who went to India around Africa. And he stopped for repairing the ships and so on the Nigerian coast. When the priests came to shore, to see how they can save the souls of the natives, they found out that these natives were practicing Judaism. Right? They kept Shabbat and they were circumcised and they many things that are typically Jewish. They didn't consider themselves, or they didn't call themselves Jews, but they called themselves Hebrew. To cut a long story short, they for maybe 400 years they became Christian because they thought they were told that Judaism had changed and it developed into Christianity. Then the British came to Nigeria and they brought the Old Testament to Nigeria. And when they read the Old Testament, they found that many things spoke to them, including the question of keeping the Shabbat, not eating certain animals, and so on and so on and so on. So they began a process of returning for them. They called it returning to Judaism. So you have now about 35 million Christians of the tribe, the Igbo tribe in Nigeria. They consider all of them themselves to be descendants of Jews, of Hebrews. Some of them, about any number between 12 and 15,000, have gone, came back to the point of departure.
Yeah.
And they are living as Jews, and not just Jews, as Orthodox Jews. I mean, they have everything.
Right.
There are about 72 active synagogues right now in Nigeria. You know what is a minyan? Minyan is 10 males. That's the quorum that you need according to Jewish tradition. You need a quorum of 10 men in order to pray in public. You can also always pray. You can pray in private in your house, but if you want to. So you have in these 72 synagogues, every Shabbat, there is a gathering of people, and they keep kosher, and they have all the tefillin and talitot, and so I've been going to them about 10 years. I've been in bar mitzvah, I've been in bat mitzvah, I even conducted a wedding. You don't need a rabbi to conduct a wedding. And, I have several homes there. When I come, I don't go to a hotel. I stay with them. And when they come here, they stay in my house. And I'm doing whatever I can in order that the Israeli government and the Jewish agency recognize the fact that they exist. Right now, the situation is that nobody accepts them as anything. And so, it reminds me of what happened to the Ethiopian Jews before they were recognized. It's a question of changing the mentality of, there are lots of rabbis, by the way, that are very interested in them and accept the fact that this can be possible. And there are other rabbis that,
Right.
So that's the situation. And of course, you have in South Africa a tribe called the Lemba. They're about 150,000 people. I've been there too. Most of them are, by the way, in Zimbabwe. In Zimbabwe and in the northern part of South Africa, there is a region called Limpopo.
Mm.
And they have several synagogues, and they consider themselves to be of Yemenite origin, Jewish Yemenite origin. Now, there was a movement of Yemenite Jews after the Islam in the southern tip of the Arabian Peninsula, where the Islam was born. They tried to convert the Christians and the Jews into Islam, and those who didn't accept were either killed or had to escape. So, to cross from Yemen of today to Africa, you just have a very narrow strait called Bab el Mandeb, which is very easily crossed from Asia to Africa. So, it seems that many of those people crossed into Africa and they turned left, south, and they reached Zimbabwe and South Africa. That would be about 1,200 years ago.
Right.
And they developed a Jewish life, which, was blended into other African traditions. So it's not so clear cut as the Igbo. Igbo are very recognizable. You see a guy with a kippah in a Nigerian city, that's a Jew. And by the way, when I'm in Nigeria, I always have a kippah on my head because my Jewish brothers there, they cannot understand a Jew that walks without his kippah. So I walk in the street with a kippah. I am a white guy. Some people approach me with a cross and they ask me, "Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish?" I say, "Yes." They say, "We too, we are also Jewish." And they have a cross here. But that's the narrative. That's the narrative.
Right, right.
Well, it's not an easy thing, but I'm optimistic.
I really appreciate you answering these questions. So this has been very enlightening and amazing. And I know that everyone listening feels the same way. We have a few questions here. I know we only have time to do as many as we can now, but I'll go ahead and get straight into it if that's okay. So the first question, Caroline Ben Ari, she asked if you've heard stories from the refugees about their difficult journey to Sudan. She says she's aware that many died along the way, but she wants to know if you had any more insight into that.
Look, of course I know, because I was on the receiving end. So, of course, we know it was a terrible march. They went by foot. They walked during the night because it's a bit less dangerous than walking during the day. Many died on the way. Others died in the camps. And there is a monument in Mount Herzl in Jerusalem, near the military cemetery. There is a monument where they are remembered by name. Their names is engraved in that monument, and every year there is a commemoration about those, and people come. Yes, of course I know.
Wow, wow. Another question here from Judith Gordon. She says, "How well have the Ethiopians been integrated into Israeli society today?"
It's right. It's a question that should be asked, and it's not easy to answer. Okay, we're here among, just between you and me, the Jews are not a very tolerant people, unfortunately, I have to say. And it should be different, the Jews have been persecuted through the history almost everywhere where they lived, so that they should be totally the contrary, but it's not the case. And they have had a lot of difficulties in integrating, but I'll tell you something. I'm not, I'm not talking about the half full cup of water. I'm not looking at the full part or the empty part. I'm looking at the process. And I've been in that process for the last 35 years. Because of course I've got relations with the Israelis from Ethiopian origin, very deep relations. And there are cases which are very difficult. But 10 years ago was much worse, and it's improving. First of all, because these people, if they survived 2,500 years in Ethiopia, which was not a paradisiac country, and they, for the last maybe 1,000 years, they were also suffered the persecution by their neighbors. So they're tough people. They are tough, and they are beginning to be felt in Israeli society. Sometimes there are demonstrations that turn a bit violent. Personally, when there is a demonstration, I participate, and I don't approve violence, but I can sometimes understand from where it comes. And I can tell you a lot of stories of friends of mine, what happens to them in daily life, in the street with police and this and that. Don't compare it to what is going on in your country. It's not that. But it should not exist in Israel. But you have got hundreds of lawyers and engineers, and you have doctors, and you have officers, and you have got, they are everywhere. And they're being felt more and more. So, it's a process. And they are very determined. And they don't surrender. So eventually, we will have equality. Of course, there is no official discrimination or things like that. It's a question of people, because they are ignorant and they don't want to learn about these people that look differently. So they develop these stereotypes, and that's something that should not happen in the Jewish country.
Absolutely. I'm getting a few similar questions, so I'm going to ask in one question, which
Joshua,
is,
if I could intervene, hello there, Advar from the Israeli consulate, just because of previous questions that was asked, I was wondering maybe if we could put on Casa, that she's also maybe could say a few words on this question and present herself, as she's also here.
I should introduce her, right? I have to introduce Casa.
Sure.
Yeah, so I'll introduce Casa with a lot of pride, because Casa is one living proof that everyone can make it. And she is a very gifted person. I know her from many years before she started a diplomatic career, and I was always impressed by the fact that she is not limited by anything. I mean, when she gets up in the morning and she looks at herself, she sees a person. And she sees a person, a beautiful person, by the way, that can do whatever she wants to do if she, she puts her mind on it, and she does whatever has to be done. And I think this is her third diplomatic position. She served in Burma, today Myanmar, which is not an easy country. And then she went to Paradise in New Zealand, and now she's in Miami, and I'm sure that she's doing a wonderful work. So I don't see her.
Thank
Casa,
you,
where are you?
Danny. It's great to see you. Thank you, Adva, Joshua, Rafi. Great to see you all. It's wonderful to be here in this webinar. It's amazing. Story. It's my family story. Danny, it's so wonderful to see you. I haven't seen you for a long time. You are a dear person. You are family. So it's, I hope to see you in Jerusalem next. We say next year in Jerusalem or sometime in Miami. Personally, I admire you. It's not easy to be a different person. To go to Sudan and to go to Ethiopia and to do what you did with Yeah, it's with Farid Aklum, which Farid Aklum son is a good friend of mine, Benny. It's a journey, you know. It's like you said, it's was our dream. I was educated like when I was a child in Ethiopia. By the way, I moved to Israel when I was 10 years old. So when we lived in the villages, in one of those 400 villages in Ethiopia next to Gondar, we thought that we are the only Beta Israel. Beta Israel is people of Israel, Beta Bait in Hebrew, home, and Israel. Like Danny said, there were 12 tribes. And we thought that we are the only tribe that left in the world. And we had no idea about white Jewish until we met people like Danny and Rafi. So it was a mutual learning itself, and the surprise. There are, you know, people of Beta Israel, people of the 12 tribe that look different than us. So it was a great mutual learning as well. So it was wonderful to have this conversation and to let people out there in the world to learn about this operation. And Rafi, thank you for, you know, writing this amazing book, and that eventually became a wonderful movie. And this morning I had part of my my work Zoom meeting with one of the pastors here in Miami, and there was a first meeting. It was a Zoom meeting, and say, "Oh, so are you?" He asking me, "So are you? Were you at the operation where I know the Red Sea Diving Resort movie?" And I was like, "You watched the movie?" I said, "Yeah." So wow, it's amazing because, you know, more and more people are learning about it and learning that, you know, Jewish people are very diverse and they're coming in a different color and from a, you know, different background, as we are separated for thousands of years since the destruction of the first temple, the second temple, and after longing and praying for many, many years and keeping our identity and our tradition in no matter what was the condition back then. And you know what? It's when you believe, it happens, and doesn't matter if it happens in your generation or the next generation. It just happened to be in my generation, which I'm very lucky, and my parents' generation. Eventually, it happens. So that is the fate of the people of Israel and the Jewish people. So I'm very, very happy to be here with you.
Thank you so much, Casa. Thank you so much. And I actually, the question can kind of be for you to answer as well, which is, in Israel, how are the Ethiopian Jewish community integrating, and how's it been since the operations to now? If you could speak to that.
Well, when we say integrating, you all need to understand that we're coming from a totally different culture, a culture where most of us, I'm talking about most of the people, not the you know, small percentage that we went to Addis Ababa or to Gondar, to the big city, that were educated, like Farid Aklum, he was a teacher. That's very small percent of our community. The majority of us, we grew up in a village. When I say village, it's village, no running water, no electricity, you know, working the land. We were farmers. And my grandfather used to just write his book. He used to, you know, process the letter and with the ink, you know, very,
Right.
very background. So when we came to Israel, we came to kind of the first, you know, culture. So when I talk about the new culture, culture different. So it's everything. Sorry, it's my son. It's to learn everything. It's to learn everything from you know, the beginning. What does that mean, to learn everything from the beginning? It means to learn how to use the electricity, to know how to learn to use the gas, or to cook. You know, back in Ethiopia, you cook with your vampire and this kind of thing. So to make a long story short, it's a whole learning of the word. So it was very difficult for our parents. So we, the younger people, learned it fast, and that's how we learned to help our parents. So the kids became the leaders of the parents, which is to be the opposite usually. So when we talk about integration, means you educate yourself, because your parents cannot really help you because they don't speak the language, they don't know the culture. So when it depends on yourself, and I must say the state of Israel gave a lot of opportunity for young people like me to go to university for free, to get education. And my dream was, to become a diplomat. I became a diplomat. So there are a lot of process going on, also we can say it, prejudice is everywhere. Prejudice is everywhere, because the first thing that these people see is your color, because they don't know you. It's a lack of knowledge, it's ignorance. So we are here, the youngest people, to educate not only the Israelis, but also the rest of the world about our history, our connection, and those kind of things. So when we talk about integration, you're talking about my generation and the second, third generation of Ethiopian origin Israelis, but they are Israelis in different color, that need to learn and they need to teach themselves. They need to find a guideline for themselves and to be successful. So like Danny said, we have lawyers, we have judges, we have doctors, we have this. So the more the generation is educated, the more know how to fight for his right, to educate ignorant people, and to fight prejudice. And it happens a lot. Easy, it's challenging. Not always the parents know how to guide their kids, in the Western world. Like I said, my mother, she doesn't know how to read and write still. So it's all depend on us and our generations. So yeah, there are challenges, but with the challenges at the same time, there are many opportunities to overcome. And like Danny said, we are very strong. We know where we came from. We know our history. Once you have a strong roots, nothing can pull you off.
Absolutely. Wow. Casa, I thank you so much for being here with us as well. To share at the end, I know we're really short on time. I want, if you can answer just one more question for me, please. And that is, what is the and if you can just briefly, we talked about the challenges that the Ethiopian Jewish community faces in Israel. What do you think is the biggest challenge, and in your opinion, what can be done to overcome that?
Yes, Kimi or Danny?
You, Casa.
You.
Well, when we say the biggest challenge, you need to look or overlook. There are many challenges. There are challenges. There are, economically challenges. It's like I said, the parents did not come with what we came almost with, with nothing beside our books, a brain with our faith, and that's the poverty also, comes with it. The other challenges I said is the like I said, it's the prejudice. There are challenges. There are challenges among young people, the teenagers, and I think when we talk about challenges, you need to see it in many ways. How it can overcome of those challenges. I'm a big believer of education. Not only education, but also when it comes to prejudice, and there are some racist people in Israel as well. We need to talk about that. We're not hiding anything. But when I say I'm a big believer of education, not only in school, but also education of the people. Israel, it's land of where the Jewish people. When I say Jewish, it's 12 tribes. It's the Judah, Reuven, Issachar, all those tribes. We all come together because we were separated for thousands of years from each other. And now all of us are coming back to one place. And each group thinks that he has his own truth. And I say, we the Ethiopian Jews, we think that we have the original, the only truth of like when God gave the Torah to Moses. That's exactly how we do. Now, the Ashkenaz Jews came from Europe think differently. The Moroccan Jews that came from Morocco, they think differently. The Yemenite think differently. So in this whole group, each group wants to show that they hold the whole truth of the Torah. So until the Mashiach, the Messiah, comes to Israel, we don't really know what. So each group is celebrated. So I'll give you an example. I come from a small city called Ramle. Okay, Ramle is an amazing city that everyone should know about. So what's so special about this city? This city has so many Jewish people from all over the world. You have the Yemenite, the Moroccan, the the Uzbekistans, the Bukhara, the Russians, you name it, many. So my favorite thing on Yom Kippur is to be, because Yom Kippur, it doesn't matter where you come from, every Jew knows that Yom Kippur is the high holiday. So my favorite thing in Ramle to do on Yom Kippur is to do synagogue hop. What does that mean? Each group has its own synagogue. So on Yom Kippur, you walk, of course, you can drive and you can eat. You walk from one synagogue to another, and you see how the Jewish people used to celebrate or what they used to wear on Yom Kippur on that day, which is the big, the biggest holiday. And the Ethiopian Jews, we have our own synagogue too. So it's very, very interesting to see that when each group claims that it has the truth, it's very natural. There will be conflicts. So I think, I think the most important thing is that in Israel, you can celebrate your own way of tradition like you used to do. It gives the proof is that everyone has its own synagogue and a celebration. The Moroccan Jews, they have the Mimuna, which is celebrated after Passover. We Ethiopians have the Sigd holiday, which is 50 days after Yom Kippur that we celebrate. So each group has. So the challenges are to control, to fit in. So there are many of them. But when we talk about young people, they are educated, they're gaining education. They are there, they are sitting in a decision-making tables. We have 2 members of the Knesset. We have 1 minister and 1 deputy minister. So it takes time. There are challenges. They're not easy. There are, prejudiced people, racist people, but we are overcoming because we know who we are, we know where we come from, and it doesn't matter what the other person thinking of us. So we need, to educate people. That's exactly the biggest challenge, is to educate people. So the lack of education and the ignorance among people brings things that we did not accept or expecting to deal with. So this is one of the reasons that we emphasize on education our youth. It's not easy, the challenges with our youth is not easy, with the police is not easy. But it's nothing comes easy. Nothing comes easy. When I went to education, nothing came for me easy. I could easily tell my parents that I'm going to school, but actually working in the malls with my friends. That could happen. I will never become a diplomat, but so I was, I had good friends, and and I chose the education, and this is what we need more educated people, more opportunities to my community, and I must say that the state of Israel giving a lot of opportunity for young people like me to pursue education and to fulfill their dreams with the challenges. So it's not everything perfect, because nothing is perfect. However, we are back to our homeland. We are so happy finally, after thousands of years of praying to Jerusalem, we are back home. And since we are home, we're building our home. There are challenges, like we said, but we will overcome those challenges by not only education, but also by law. And it goes both ways, from bottom to up and from up to the bottom. So I believe in that very much.
Absolutely. Casa, that's powerful. I thank you so much for speaking with us and sharing that. People are even commenting now that they're just in tears hearing your story and hearing what you have to say about your community. So thank you. And I want to say thank you to everyone, Danny, Casa, Rafi, Adva, Sophia at the consulate. Thank you so much for hosting this, for putting it on. And thank you all for sharing your backgrounds and your contribution to this incredible movement that's been going on for a long time. I'm humbled to be with you and to talk to you, and everyone who's here, please share it with your friends. Let them know, because these are stories that need to continue to be unearthed, and people need to continue learning and knowing about these things. So thank you all so very much. On behalf of Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel, I want to say thank you, and I hope you all be well. And we'll do this again very soon, hopefully. Maybe we can do it in person next time. Who knows?
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Bye, you all. Take care.
Watch it on Facebook. You can read the book, The Red Sea Spies. You can see the movie. But I think the most authentic thing is to watch it in our channel again and again, because it was really moving. Thank you, everyone. Really.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you, Joshua. It was great. I see people are still with us. Really, thank you. I enjoyed it a lot.
Thanks, Adva. Thank you for asking me. It was an honor. It was a pleasure.
I have to say, you know, how long have we been on air now? An hour and 20 minutes. I've literally sat here with a smile on my face for that entire length of time. It's a story I know very, very well, inside out in many respects, but you know, this event has been just wonderful. You spoke about education, and that's what I've gained from this whole experience from the outset. For me, it's just been a fantastic education and eye-opener. And you know, as amazing as the story is, and the book describes in full what happened, important thing is that people take away from it deep admiration and love for the Ethiopian Jews, because that's something which I certainly gained and will, you know, hold dearly and cherish for a long time. And they're a wonderful, wonderful community.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. When Casa talked about education, one of the things that stuck out to me the most, it's just a couple of parallels. I mean, I know that, you know, right after slavery for us, for the African Americans, our literacy rate was 0, and then in just one generation it was 50%. You know, and we continue to excel quickly from there. And I know that for the Ethiopian Jews, that transformation was very similar. They're like one of the fastest growing, excelling communities, you know, in terms of education, and it's like Danny said, it's the toughness. It's, you know, our hardship enabled us to kind of be more resilient, even though our you know, a lot of the parents of those slaves, or the parents weren't educated, their children were still able to get very far, you know, to advise presidents and write books and all those things. And so it's awesome. It's always incredible to hear those